Paul's website, if you like what's being said here, Paul's website is zenbitchslap.com, where you can find a load of his videos, all his readings, a lot of his audio, and all his books in particular. His books are outstanding, and there's some really good stuff on recovery in there. So highly recommended. And with that, I'll hand you over to Paul. Over to you, mate.
Hey everybody, Paul, alcoholic. Again, I like to emphasize that really what we're going to speak about is from the diagnosis of the exact nature of the wrong, or wrongs, someone called me up about. It's the exact nature of the wrongs, but basically the exact nature of the wrongs is the exact nature of the wrong. And from there, we try to bring that view to all the other suggestions and steps and stuff like that in the way of life called recovery, AA. So the basis of the point is on page 64. It's the pivot point I've been using for years. And that is, I think it's around the third paragraph, and he's getting ready to go into the nuts and bolts of the inventory process. And he makes a statement, and this is, you can look at the inventory maybe a lot of ways, but this is one of the ways. And he suggests, well, first of all, the requirement is being convinced, which means to believe with certainty. So basically, hopefully from the first step and the reflection on what it was like to be a real addict or an alcoholic, you've come to these conclusions, and they've sort of been like branded or tattooed into you. So there's a belief with certainty that I'm powerless over alcohol and that I'm not managerial quality in a way. So being convinced that self, which is what he's speaking of, manifested in various ways is what has defeated us. That's the statement that he's asking us to be convinced of. Yes, that self. So he's targeting the exact nature of the wrong, and it isn't us. It's not alcoholism, really. It's self. It's this identification as something, as the doer when there's doing, as the seer when they're seeing, stuff like that. So being convinced that self manifested in various ways. So how we got defeated by self in our life was self's manifestations. And if you realize, it's very difficult to, when you're under the influence, it's very difficult to see, well, what are my manifestations and what are self's manifestations? So the disease gets muddied because of the identification as self. So being convinced that self manifested in various ways is what has defeated us. That's what we're supposed to be convinced of. We will, and then it stopped, we will now look at its, self's common manifestations. And then the next paragraph in the book is resentment. So the way I see it is that doing an inventory on resentment and fear and looking at how I harm people in the pursuit of what I want through looking at the sexual inventory. These are some of the common manifestations of self. They're not the only ones. By recognizing the resentments and the fears and the harms done to others, and by going through a 4-column inventory, we hope to see how we were defeated by self by looking at its manifestations. Now, this is where I see the activity of the Z's even in this process of the solution, because when most of us, the way I was introduced to it, and most of the way I hear people talk about it, they're talking about resentments as theirs, as if they are the one who had the resentment, but really, in a weird way, you were had by a resentment, really. It's sort of this idea of proprietoriness and ownership really is stretched pretty thin if you investigate. it really feels more like when there's a resentment going on, the resentment has me. It's not like I have the resentment. Yeah, and fear seems to have me instead of I have the fear. Yeah, and I act out and do shit that I'm really not even into. So basically, that behavior seems to have me instead of me exhibiting that behavior. That's just the way I feel about it. So resentment, fears, and harms done to others are manifestations of self in one's life. They're not manifestations of Paul in one's life, unless Paul is identified as self, which is what's going on. So that's why everyone, I don't know, I watch people, this idea I would think would be so clear, self can't get out of self. But in the act of being identified as self, we call, let's say, an unknown or without knowing it, an aspect of self, Paul, or Amelia, or David, or Daz. And now self is disguised as Paul, and then when self manifests through Paul, Paul claims to be the one who did the manifestation. Yeah, I'm the source of the manifestation. That's the bondage of self. I don't see how it cannot be seen. It can be seen any other way. There's manifestations, resentments, and fear that seem to saddle us and make us travel a lot heavier. Those manifestations are claimed to be ours. Yeah. That to me is the act of being identified as self, which is one of the bondages of self. So now I'm bound to self's manifestations by claiming them to be mine. And therefore, a manifestation of self, let's say, called resentment, held as my resentment, has a 40-year life. Yeah, when it could have come and gone in a day, I breathe so much life into it by the claiming of it. I see a huge difference between resentment and my resentment, and fear and my fear, and acting out and my acting out. I see a huge heaviness with the my. And that to me is this activity that I'm not in knowledge of. I'm unaware of what's going on. In a way, the parasite has dug so deeply and camouflaged itself so well in the host sees it as the host. Yeah, it doesn't see it as a parasitical agent or a foreign pathogen, or however you want to picture it. So if I don't see that something came in, how can I expect it to go out? Yeah, I have to recognize that I grew into something to grow out of it. If I think that's the way it is, I'm just going to constantly keep growing in it. Yeah. So this is so pivotal to me, you know, in this community and in this program. I feel it's so influential because when it hit me in a real solid way, and I remember it to this day, I saw that sentence. That's why I use it so much. It just triggers an avalanche of sense-feltness of freedom, of relief. That being convinced that self, and I saw self, I held self as something else than me. That was the main key that wasn't being noticed. And so I was always captured in the statement self, trying to get out of self. I was trying to be free as the problem instead of having freedom from the problem. It just changed everything, this identification. And once I saw self as not as Paul, but as other, then the next possibility just downloaded, which is I can be free from it. Yeah. What a novel freaking idea. And then it showed me in a flash that I had been trying to be free as it most of my, since I've been 6 or 7 years old. I've been trying to get out of this irritating, this agitated condition as the agitating condition. It was unbelievable. So I needed this one little trigger. All the evidence of me being defeated by self was already there. All the evidence of a failed system was already there. All the impossibility of getting out of a system as a system was already there. I just didn't see that there was an identification as the system. I didn't see it, and then I did. And from that point on, because at that point, my life was basically framed by recovery. I had been about 7 or 8 years in the program, and the only other life I had known was a feral, fucking, gone to seed, disturbed, alcoholic addict life. I didn't have a great life before, in a way. So I had a new way of life, which was recovery. And then when I hit this point, it changed the whole program for me, and the effect and how I traveled in my life. Because the way I traveled was through the program of recovery and the principles. But how I was traveling, I was still traveling incredibly heavy at times, based on the burden of being bonded to self. Yeah. It was like having a shackle at the beach. I took my chains in the water. Yeah. This was it was pointed out to me. I mean, for me, I call it the higher power. It was like a download. And I saw that as not me, as foreign. And then it opened up a possibility. I can be free from it. And that's been just playing out ever since. 20-something, whatever years. The way of life is the same. I haven't drank or used, and the principles are the same, and the steps are the same, but something radically changed. Yeah. I had a life of recovery, but something radically changed when I got to see the exact nature of the wrong. It really changed everything. I saw things in a new light. I could recognize what I'm not appearing as what I am. I could start recognizing it. And when I did, I brought it to steps 6 and 7. And I asked that power to reconfigure it, because it's all the same energy. It's just been twisted and tied up by a parasitical movement. And as the parasitical movement, I can't straighten it out. Yeah? Self can't get out of self. So I have to see the one self that's trying to get out of self as companions of the same system. Even though I call one Paul, and I recognize the demon of self, or the enemy of self, or that which needs to be vanquished, I was still not seeing Paul, aka self, until I did. And it's never changed since then. Yeah? So, in a way, there are people who are so profound. They are so astute with the big book of AA. They know every sentence. They know how many times the word must is used and self is used and stuff like that. That's not me. I'm just sharing about the real shift, recognizing what I humbly feel is the exact nature of the wrong. Yeah, because there are going to be better step meetings in this, because people are going to go through every sentence and go over it, but I don't believe they capture this ingredient. Yeah, and so this is why I just keep putting it in, because I never heard of it before in AA. I was taught to do my inventory and look at my resentments and my fear. And I know there's a point and a phase of coming to recognize all that you've been denying, like you as an alcoholic, you as an asshole, you as a thief and a liar. That has to be allowed to land. But that doesn't, when it lands, and I finally let it be as much of me as it wanted to be after trying to deny it for so many years, it doesn't just stop there. It then takes me to a point where I see what I'm not. All that shit I was trying to make not me, I made it more me, trying to make it not me. When I let it be me and I admitted, I'm a fucking addict. I'm going to take advantage of you. I fucked up. I did this. I did that. When I told the truth about it, there was another truth. There was another truth there, which is I'm not that. Yeah. Alcoholism had me. I am not an alcoholic in a way. Yeah. Alcoholism had me. Now, in the beginning, I had to say I'm an alcoholic, but it's almost a process of transformation. First, what you denied to be so, you allow to be so, and then you truly see it as not so. Yeah? I don't believe many of us even entertain there's that third possibility. Yeah, I'm denying something, that's fucking giving it more life than ever. There's an admittance of my role in things. I finally take responsibility, and then I see how really accountable I am. Yeah? And then I can get to see when the x-ray of me is now seen in this light, I see the parasitical movement. I see that which has infected me. I see something living as me. And I can discriminate. Yeah? I can say, all right, that's not my fucking manifestation. Definitely not. So I'm hoping these things are helpful and they give you a way for the light that's always available to be directed and see the evidence underlying the evidence. Seeing that why did people from our community reach a conclusion and said, and this is a very important statement in our community, self can't get out of self. Isn't that because they witnessed themselves trying to do exactly that? How did they come to that recognition? They didn't have it to begin with. They came to it because they've observed that that's what was happening. Self, it wasn't Paul was trying to get out of self, or Paul was trying to get out of alcoholism. It was self trying to get out of self, and alcoholism trying to get out of alcoholism. Yeah? So, yeah, there you go.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so thanks very much, Paul. And we've already got...
What step did you want to do today?
Sorry, mate?
What step were we going to do today, if we were?
I'm not really entirely sure. I thought it was step...
All right, well, good.
But that was...
5 last week.
5 last week, so six today. But it was brilliant. So whatever you did it was fine. There's already some hands getting up here. So Kaiser, it's our old mate Kaiser. How are you, mate?
Hey, Kaiser.
Yeah, he's unmuted.
Good man.
Hey, Kaiser.
I need to say your name at least once a day. Kaiser. Yeah.
Oh dear, we've got technical issues here. We can't hear him.
We're trying to unmute you there, mate.
He's unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's it.
Can you hear me?
Okay,
good. Yeah. So Paul, a lot of the stuff is starting to sink in, and some of it's not. It's like I'm not able to hear some things. If you said a couple of things several times, and I've heard it a lot, but it's just not sinking in. And I'm coming from the point of Kaiser, and so maybe Kaiser can't get it, and maybe it's not important for me to get it, and maybe it's important for something else. But here goes. You said that you use an example of having fear, like I believe I have fear, and then you said fear having us, and I've heard that a lot, but I don't understand what you mean by that. And maybe it's because you're at a different vantage point and you can't communicate it, or maybe I can't understand it, and that's okay too. But you said that tonight, and you said and I'm still a little confused about I believe I have fear, and then the distinction of fear having us, that hasn't sunk in, and I don't understand what you mean by that. I think I don't understand.
All right, so let me just jump in. What's your experience, not your interpretation, but your experience when you're in fear? Does it feel like you're having it or it's having you?
It feels Well, I'm experiencing it, so it's kind of like, I guess, having me. Yeah. Okay.
So, and then
Huh.
what happens is there's an interpretation of it, and the interpretation changes it into I'm having fear. Yeah?
Yeah, and then there's the magic trick where you preconceive a one before you had the experience. Okay. Okay, that's helpful.
So if you go with how you feel, like how I felt when I was under the influence was I was apt to do almost anything to get more of that which I was looking for. That's how I felt. A day or two later, or if I sat in front of the police or a therapist, I would say, I was really doing all this crazy shit Friday night. It sounds like I chose to do it, doesn't it?
Seems to, yeah.
Yeah, so the experience basically isn't emphasized, and an interpretation is emphasized based on I have a lot to do with a lot of shit I have nothing to do with, really. Yeah?
And then that's the creation of the self, and that's playing God when I say I have fear and I don't even realize that it's taking place. Yeah.
Yes. Well, there's no creation of self because there isn't one. There's a making of one. Yeah. The narration, the interpretation, the conceptualization is making a self. Yeah. Which is should have known better. You see, you don't know how much guilt and shame has been triggered by the interpretation after what you fucked around with the night before, and then you sit with the beast and it starts telling you, you should have fucking known better. Why didn't you? Why did you do that? As if you had any say in the matter. Yeah? There's a huge difference between living and my life. Yeah? Living is experiential. My life is a fucking story. Yeah? Why do we have one before the other when the one comes after the other? First there's the living and then there's the interpretation of my life. Why do we live in this narration that it's my life and I'm living it? Why? It's like a weird placement to me. Yeah? And the freedom from the bondage of self gets emphasizes the first. There's living. And then the narration is secondary. Instead of the narration and interpretation being primary and the living being underemphasized. That's what happens through the process of the program. You get moved out of a story and you get the sense of living. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With the hopes that you can recognize one from the other. Really? I mean, why would I want to have that which comes after be before? I'd rather just stay with what's before. And then maybe I'll have some immunity to that which comes after the story. Yeah. I don't know. I do know. That's how I see it. So that's what I'm talking about when really, and I'm talking, when, have you ever seen someone in a fucking panic attack?
Yes.
That person is not having a panic attack. The panic has that person completely. It's shaking it. That person's story gets shaken to the core in about 3 seconds. I've watched someone go into one in about 4 seconds. There was a ongoing narration, and suddenly something occurred, and the narration just popped, and there was a complete adrenaline takeover. And yet, when she got out of the fear, whatever you call it, panic attack, the story supplanted it and started saying, well, there I did it again. I fucking flipped out into a panic attack when she had nothing to do with it. She was more surprised than anyone when it came over her. Yeah? I mean, really? Can't you use just the obviousness of observing to see what's going on? Why would I? You see, if I'm not happy about how my placement on the horse, well, check out, there's another, maybe I should be facing forward. I don't know. Yeah? You don't have to kill the horse. Just Allow the higher power to put the interpretation where it is, sort of like, there'd be a football game, and then there's the announcer, and you're in the football game, and you're sort of having the experience, and then the announcer is interpreting the game, and it doesn't fit you. He's saying, "Oh, they're going to lose again," or whatever. That you're not feeling that, but if there's faith in the narration or the sportscaster, you're going to override your own experience and believe a fucking interpretation. That's, to me, is slavery. I don't know what else you want to call it. So, yes, that's when I'm talking about my fear in the AA parlance, in this particular area of inventory. He just disputed the claim of my by saying fear is a manifestation of self, and self is what has defeated us, and the my would come from the us. Yeah, but it's not ours. It's a manifestation of self. Why are we calling it mine if it ain't? It's like me calling my neighbor's lawn my lawn and fucking being embarrassed because it looks terrible and trying to mow it all day. It's not my fucking lawn. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm missing it. Someone clarify it. Maybe I have the wrong meaning of language, but if you break it down, being convinced is the precursor or the condition you need to be in what? The next presentation, which is self manifested in various ways, is what has defeated us. Are you or not convinced of that? If you're not, we're going to throw you an invitation so maybe you can become convinced of that. Yeah, I don't know, but let's say, all right, being convinced of what? Self manifested in various ways. Yes? All right. Self manifested in various ways. And then what happened by the various ways self manifests? It defeats us with those manifestations. What? Oh, yeah. It defeats us. So self defeats us by its manifestations. Okay, if that's clear, we're going to look at its, meaning selves. It's not its meaning us. It's its meaning self, what he's talking about. He has not said anything about our manifestations. He's talking about a foreign pathogen's manifestations in the body of us, yeah? All right, if you're clear about that, let's look at some of the common ones. We're not even going to get into the underlying shit. We're just the shit that's so fucking obvious, we should be able to pin it on the right culprit, all right? Resentment, number one offender, all right? Resentment. So, just bring it back. Resentment, bypass us, is a manifestation of self. It's not ours. Why are we constantly calling them ours? I don't get it. We must believe that self is us. Because when self manifests through us, we call it me. I mean, that's the bondage of self.
Very precise, thank you.
What else is it? Something that you're not has a huge sway in your life. You're bound to something that you're not. That's bondage, yeah? Bondage is something, some accessory, some tool, some mechanism is curtailing you, is binding you, yeah? So if I was bound to this chair, it would maybe be a handcuff, yes? That's the binding agent. I'm bound to this chair by a handcuff. The bondage of self is by identification. The bondage of self is how you're bonded to self is identifying as self. We're trying to draw the handcuffs. We're trying to point out the handcuffs. So you can see there's a bonding agent going on. Something is binding me or gluing me or appearing to be gluing me to something else. Yeah? And I'm living as if I'm not something else. And how do I know that? Well, when that something else manifests through this me, I call it mine. I must be identified as that something else. And it's because the language, a Stanley could be manifesting through you, and the language would still say it was me. Yeah? The language sees you only as a long lasting, independent, separate thing, completely whole and having your complete comprehensive integrity. It doesn't see that things are taking you over all freaking day. The language isn't going to get you out of here. It ain't. It's used to reinforce the bondage. You have to see it before language, before thought. That's what I am. I am that which is before thought. And before language, I am the seeing of thought. I am the seeing of language. Yeah? I'm awareness. I have to be, or if you want to call it spirit.
And thought is of the brain, and the brain is of the body, so it has no other opportunity but to define you as the body.
Of course it does. The system of what we're not has complete integrity. The whole system has one agenda, which is to reinforce the idea of you. You're remembered as a body, you're thought of as a body, you're dreamt of as a body. Yeah, you're a body. Yeah, why waste time trying to convince that system that you're spirit? It's insane. Just see what you're not. You're not that. Yeah. I have it luxuriously, really, because the active angst of that drive to get loaded was removed. I've never had a strong feeling or thought about alcohol and drugs in 30-something years. I mean, in this world of fucking, problems disguised as solutions, this is a real solution. That radioactive isotope was removed in me. That urge was removed. And the thoughts and the feelings that used to reinforce that urge and accompany that urge has been removed. Yeah? So I'm not struggling to get a breath of air, constantly getting sucked down under the surface. Yeah? Grace has given me a way of life for 30-something years. Yeah? And I'm just responding in kind. Yeah? I can see what's not happening as what's not happening. I can see false evidence getting ready to appear real. A lot more than I used to. I'll tell you that. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. I don't study the book. I don't study shit. I don't. The book frames and captures intimate senses of relief and anguish beautifully. Yeah. I want freedom. I don't want to know the solution. I want to be the solution. Yeah. I don't want to pass on knowledge about the solution. I want to pass on knowledge about the problem. We are the solution. All right. Kaiser.
Thank you very much. Very clear. Perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic, Kaiser. Thanks for coming back and supporting this meeting, mate. Or these reflections. It's awesome to see you. Next one's Jack G. Oh, you're unmuted. You should be. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good morning, Paul. It's
Yes.
it's great to see you. I spoke at the meeting Thursday, I think, and I got an incredible hit from listening to some of your previous videos, and you know, I can't thank you enough for what I've been learning here. And anyway, you know, some time elapsed, and the selfing started again. But what I noticed is that it's never going to be the same, and I'm never going to look at it the same again.
Great. Yes.
Yeah. And
That's awesome. Yeah.
and I'm down with you with the study. I did a lot of studying over the years, and I'm one of those guys that learned the big book inside and out. And I found that when I sit at a teaching like this, that the more I listen, the less questions I have. And that's, you know, it's like getting the download, you know? And so I really appreciate that. So just two things. One on a much lighter note, not as intense. I notice when you say goodbye to everybody at the end of the meeting, it reminds me of Romper Room when I was a kid. You know what I'm talking about? You're old enough to remember that, right?
You really do. It's making me feel creepy.
She's like looking in the mirror, and then it becomes clear, and you can see her face through it. And she's, "Hi, Billy and Bobby," and yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Anyway,
It's my attempt for my Zoom defined attempt for fellowship.
it's awesome, man, and I love how you recognize everybody. It shows, it makes someone like me feel good. Anyway, the thing I've been thinking about the past couple days actually is in the 11th step in the step book in the St. Francis prayer, and
Yeah.
one of the last lines in that it is by self-forgetting that one finds, and I just feel like, you know, they've really dropped hints all throughout the literature, and you know, to exactly what you're talking about. You know, that line has taken on a new meaning for me.
Yes.
Before, it meant, don't be a selfish jerk. That's what it meant before. But now it's a completely different meaning. And I don't know if you'd want to speak on that or whatever, but thanks again, Paul. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Well, Jack, just what you shared was captured the feeling I'm really trying to put out. The words are secondary. We're trying to trigger what you just shared. And so that's beautiful. And then in the self-forgetting, see, the thing is, you're not forgetting you, you're forgetting self. They're completely different. Yeah? And then you never have to be remembered because you always are. Yeah? Self has to constantly be remembered because it ain't. Tell you the truth. So what you are never needs to be remembered. It never goes anywhere. In your life, you're always going to be there. And meaning bigger than the body and everything like that. But that which you're not needs to constantly be remembered. Yeah. That's why it's so busy and it's so agitated, and it's exhausting, really. Some of the great relief is just basically exhaling and not having to participate in all that exhausting lifting and shifting and changing the narration and fucking, it's just so much work. It's so much work dancing with what's not happening all day. It's so much easier just to have an acceptance of actually what's going on. You always have the ability to live through what's going on. You very rarely see yourself as having the ability to live through what's not happening because it could be anything. So, yeah, it's in self-forgetting. Yeah, same thing. I like to look at that statement, abandon, you abandon yourself over to God. Well, that to me is you're abandoning something else other than you to God. Yeah? Self. And the your is important because it's the claiming of self, yeah, that we're abandoning. It's true. It's the identification. So your self would be, the your would imply the identification and then there's self. So we are abandoning our identification with self to God, let's say. He may not have meant it, but I'm making it up now. So, yeah, I like that. I like the self-forgetting for sure. See, what you're not can be forgotten. It can. It's forgotten quite a lot during the day when you're doing something you love, or you get into the zone, like they talk about in thing, or you get absorbed with someone you love, or whatever. There's a lot of forgetting of self all freaking day. It's just when self reappears, it never remembers that. It remembers that as being there. So it always claims its own absence, which is quite often. And so that the narration, they're seen as minor speed bumps to get over. But basically, a lot of the time during the day, you're free from the bondage of self. It's just that it usually shows back up and it tells you that isn't so. But yeah. So thanks, man. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you, Paul. Cheers, Jack. Cheers, mate. Next one's Angela. You're on mute.
Hi.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. And I'm actually new to this AA program. So I have a couple of questions. So this is like from I think, like in another talk that you just had before this talk. You mentioned something about fear, and my question was, what do you mean that fearing, like that we're trying to play God when we fear? What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know if I said you're trying to play God when you fear. When there's fear, there'll be a reaction from that which is playing God, which actually usually amplifies the fear even more. Yes? And most of the time, first of all, people aren't in fear. They're in mental anxiety. Yeah? There's no apparent threat most of the time in that moment. It's just that we're dwelling, or the head is dwelling in what's not happening. So we're having a pre-anxiety about something we think is going to occur. That's all manufactured by the head. And actually, it's manufactured through faith. Yeah? Tell you the truth. Faith in the thought system. So if you're a new person in this program, I would just get the externals down. Go to meetings, see if you can get a commitment at the Zoom meeting or whatever, and just put your feet into the program and follow the suggestions that are offered and see if they work for you or not. And then when fear arises, or when you come to notice it, just ask that power that hopefully you're having a relationship with to remove it, yeah? And then get busy, yeah? Down the road, you'll be able to look at the anatomy of things and the diagnosis of things. Right now, I think you just need to get relief from it. Yeah?
Busy, what do you mean? Just get busy.
Get relief is to have less fear. So let's say in AA, the main principle of our program in AA is to rely on something greater than self. Yeah? And how we do that is when there's fear, which usually the head reacts as if I'm going to do something about it, either distract myself or fucking do an action or make a call or send an email or whatever, somehow we sort of suspend that for a second and we ask that higher power to help remove the fear. Yeah? So it's a different way of living. Because usually what promotes the fear is that which is producing the fear trying to get out of the fear. Seriously.
Right.
Yeah. So we want to bring in this idea of something greater than us that will do for us what we can't do for ourselves. So many people who I don't see many great escape artists of fear. I don't. So the way for us in AA is to turn these things over to the care of this other power. Yeah? And then follow the suggestions, which is to be available to other people and a lot of other mechanisms like the serenity prayer and stuff like that.
Okay. And just one more question.
Yeah.
Now this might sound kind of like dumb to ask, but I'm still confused about it. You said that you is different from self, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you is different from self. I'm confused. I thought you is like you yourself. Like
No. The way we're saying you would be, this is just a belief. It's not AA's belief. Maybe it is, but it's mine. I feel we are of a spiritual nature, not a physical, mental, emotional nature. Yes? So when I say
repeat that, please.
you on one level, I'm talking about spirit. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Oh, I see. And then self is like physical.
No, self isn't physical. Self is a mental activity. Self is what is the basis of the whole narration that we're listening to all day. Yeah?
Oh, what you keep creating in your head constantly. This narrative.
It's a mental object that's being thought about quite a lot to the point that it's taken itself to be the thinker of all the thoughts. Yeah.
It's trapping you?
What?
In a way? It's trapping you?
It's doing what?
Trapping you, in a way.
Slapping?
Trapping.
Yeah. What is it? Slapping?
Trap, as in a trap.
Stuck, like
it's basically, it's not even doing, it's implying it's already trapped you. It's got a weird, see, don't worry about this, but to say it, it's trapping us, but how it traps us is it says we're already trapped.
So how can we not get trapped in it?
Because by seeing what you're not, yeah, or just by following the program. The program is going to change how you see you, yeah? The program is going to change you. Let's put it that way. And as it says in our vision for you, meaning you and me, this power that we've gotten introduced to is constantly going to reveal us a lot of shit. That's what you're signing up for. You're going to see a lot of stuff. And you're gonna see differences where you didn't see differences. You're gonna see the disease from you, not as you. Yeah?
I understand.
Yeah. If the disease has infiltrated every aspect of what you call you, it's going to be difficult to recognize what that is and what you are. The program of recovery brings a recognition of that. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, you have the most important quality already.
What?
Willingness.
Mm.
You can't go wrong with willingness. You can't. It just needs to be directed correctly, and that's what the program does. Yeah? You know, if you like, after the talk, people keep talking, and there'll be some women there you can get in touch with, maybe. Yeah? Who would like to trudge the road of happy destiny with you a little bit. Yeah?
Sure,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so after this is over, the room stays open for a while. So yeah, come back or stay and maybe speak to some of the members here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, man.
Yeah. So that's great, Angela. And as Paul says, we'll invite some of the female members here if you want to stay behind and talk to Angela. That would be awesome after the meeting. So if you want to hang around, Angela, just send a message in chat. That'd be awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And we are here every Tuesday and Thursday. And with that, I'm over to Leah. How are you, Leah?
Oh, Leah from yesterday. Hey, Leah.
You can't shake me off of you. How are you?
Good, very good. You?
I'm good. It's a gift to have been there last night and then to be here today. So just to recap, so I make sure I've got this correctly.
It doesn't matter, honey. You're in the right place anyway.
Okay.
But go ahead.
I want to make sure I'm clear.
All right.
If a tiger is chasing me, which there's a less than 1% chance of that happening, and I get fear, legit, myself, I, physically, mentally, blah, 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 I'm feeling fear.
Yes.
So it's not going to happen. However, what happens the rest of the 99% of the time is I'm identified with myself. I'm identified with my thoughts. I'm identified with being emotional. I'm triggered all the time. I'm identified with the false evidence of my disease. I'm identified with the tape that plays in my head, my narrative. It's all untruths. Once I'm aware that this bullshit is happening, my job is to follow the program, give it to God, shut up and listen, and is there any other action I can take?
Maybe be of help to someone else and stuff.
Am I clear on your description of the self versus me?
You're getting there.
Leah. So Leah, my understanding is I'm a child of God. I was not born scared. I was not born emotional. I was not born with the tape in my head. I was not born to have panic attacks. I was not born to be scared shitless of not having a job, blah, 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 blah. These are all things that came along, and I believed them to be universal truths in my life, and it became a narrative. It became, this is who Leah is, but my job as a recovered person is to give that shit to God.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Remember the statement, the good and bad of you. So the good parts of Leah and the bad parts of Leah. Give it all over if you can.
Okay, clear. Thank
Remember that? It says in the big book, it says, we, whatever, I think it's the 7-step prayer. Offer all of us, the good and bad, whatever. Yeah, because the higher power doesn't see good and bad. It's just going to recycle everything. Yeah? And so some of my worst qualities have been put to the best use. Yeah, that's how it goes. So, I mean, I may have my wish of how I want to be, but the higher power has its idea, which may not comply with my wishes. Yeah.
That's the surrender piece where I'm just saying, do with my life, God, take me down the path of your choosing.
Yeah, why not? Works better than letting Leah. Eh? It's a nice option to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
After you've smoldered in the embers of in the embers of a failed system, it's nice there's another possibility. Yeah, trusting something infinite. Can you imagine if there wasn't that option? Fuck.
Thank you.
And there's always that option. We're of the infinite. Yeah, so there's always the option of trusting something infinite. Yeah. That's
Paul,
all.
Paul, what compels us to fight that?
I don't know. Fucking being special, I guess. Yeah, it's not us. See, that which is playing God can't stop playing God. Yeah, it's nothing. You're not gonna make it a service animal. It's just that's what it does. It plays God. Yeah, and so if you try to convince it, you gotta quit playing God. We always use this statement, but if you try to convince it to quit playing God, it will try to play God about that, which is playing God ad infinitum. You can't get out of it through it, yeah? That which is playing God, every move it makes is going to be a playing of God, yeah? So you have to see what you're not. I'm not that which is playing God. And from there, it looks completely different. If I'm looking at it from that which is playing God, I'll just try to quit playing God, and then that will fail once again. And I'll see it was all playing God. But when I see it as other, I can recognize it. Yeah, it's a failed system. It is not God, but it has a huge desire to play God. And it's not giving up that desire. It's built into its programming. So you can stay as long as you want, hoping you're going to change it, but fucking, I would just, perhaps there's a better way, trusting something infinite. Yeah. And that infinite isn't playing God. I would say more, it is God. It doesn't need to act out playing God. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Cool.
Thank you very much. Next up, Maggie. Hey, Maggie.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Paul.
Hey.
Thanks for
Where are
taking
you, Maggie?
right here.
I'm trying to find you. I can hear you though, so I'm just trying to find you on the squares. Oh, here you are. Hey,
Hi.
Maggie, how are you?
I'm all right. Um, Angela, I wanted to welcome you. Good to see you here. This is like next level shit. Um, so my question is, since I've been, here listening and having this whole other experience after 31 years of sobriety, what's been coming up lately is, and I know this is for everyone, but I when I start to get overwhelmed with the things that are going on in the world, my tendency is to just I don't look at the news. I just kind of live my day to day, and I try to see where I can be of service. And but what happens for me is I get people in my life who are really caught up in the fear and kind of getting off on it and want to pontificate on it and what's going to happen and project. And I have this real reaction, which is to just run away. Like, I don't want to get caught up in that. So I'm in fear. Like, I'm in fear of their fear. And I've been asked to write inventory about that. So my question is, lately, since I've been listening to you and kind of trying to let Spirit download this to me, is like, I almost feel like what's the point of writing inventory? Like, isn't that just more self, like looking at my fear and second column why I have the fear and third column what it affects? Isn't that all just like writing about self over and over, which isn't even real? I almost feel like I'm in this place right now where I'm questioning, like, what's the point of that whole process? When maybe when you have time, maybe in the beginning, but am I right or am I is there something to be had from writing?
Well, it's not again, this is just coming from me. I'm no authority on anything. I'm just sharing. Again, there's no rote answer. Yeah. At times, writing is very helpful. At times, it may be used to reinforce the idea of being the writer. Yes? Who knows? You can't tell unless I'm in there with you. But if you're feeling like you don't want to write about this, then I don't want to go against what your sponsor suggests. It's your sponsor, so follow the suggestion. It's not writing or not writing. It's seeing maybe you're not that, which is thinking about being the writer or the not writer. Yeah? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's just taking another step back and looking at another appearance of Maggie, now wondering if she should be a writer or a non-writer. Yeah? That's how I would see it. But yeah, it's happened with me. A lot of, I don't do much inventory anymore because I did a lot of inventory. Yeah. And now when I recognize it, I can do it in my head and just bring it to 6 and 7. If something really twists something in my gut, I'll share it with one of my sponsees because they have more time than me. So we sponsor each other. But that hasn't happened much. So, yeah, I think, maybe it's time not to do it. But I'm just, yeah. See, Maggie, we change, yeah? The program changes us. And then from that new position, we see the program differently. That's how it works, yeah? So maybe you should trust your gut and just say, I don't feel I don't feel like this has got that much weight to put pen to paper. Maybe the fear has wisdom. You just maybe limit your affairs with those people. What's the big deal? Yeah.
I feel like the half hour of writing is better served sitting quietly.
Well, then do that.
Yeah.
Oh, you can do both, but yeah, do that. Make 15 minutes writing, 15 minutes sitting. I don't know. Again, I don't like going against sponsors. So, but yeah, you feel it in your gut. I mean, obviously, you gotta go with your gut eventually. Yeah, and be accountable for what happens. I don't think it's a huge event. Yeah, for me, a lot of times, what's called fear can be wisdom. Yeah. I don't want to spend a lot of time with those people. So what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Most of the changes like this that I've gone through were unheralded, yeah? they weren't big things. I just lost interest in a lot of stuff. Yeah. And so a lot of things that I would think I've got to write about this, they didn't really, that was too much attention for them, really. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, if I don't want to see people, I don't see them. You know, I mean, if it hurt family, but if like I don't, you know, I don't feel like I have to see people. You know, I mean, we have people come here, and then all of a sudden I say, "All right, see ya," and then everyone gets up and we all go our separate ways. So I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't want to be disturbed by someone else. Like I want to be able to just.
Well, you found yourself in the wrong neighborhood. There's people here.
But you
See,
know, like being okay with them being terrified.
Maggie, that has value. You got to something there. So now you turn that over to the care of your higher power.
Yeah.
You don't want to be disturbed by other people. Just turn that over.
I don't want to be disturbed, period. Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's why you're getting situations to be disturbed.
Yeah.
Because you've delineated, or something has delineated its way, and then life wants to fuck with you. It always happens. I don't want to be disturbed by any phone calls. The phone rings right away. You gotta laugh at it. It's better not to make any pronouncements, honey. Haven't you figured that one out?
So try
it. Announcing my major plans to the higher power tends to sort of make me the butt of the joke. I'm happy to see you, Maggie. Keep coming back, yeah?
Great to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Good on you, Maggie. Thank you. Two more questions. First from Dave, and then Kristen. Dave, up you go, mate.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, David. And yeah, thanks, Paul. Good to hear you tonight. So when I was listening to you tonight, Paul, it really sort of hit home to me, you know, and what you're saying is really resonating with me. The sheer, it's a very radical, you know what I mean? The sheer radicalness of what you're saying, you know, and the implications of it, you know what I mean? It is hot for me. It's quite highly radical. Like when you were talking about the resentment, for example, right? So you know, Dave isn't having a resentment. The resentment has me. You know what I mean? That, you know, I'm not having a resentment. The resentments are having me, and also like a panic attack. Absolutely. You know, like fucking. I've known them for a long time, but pre-recovery, and you know, and sometimes in early recovery as well. I had terrible panic attacks. You know what I mean? And it was like, yeah, they were having me. You know, but certainly like on the resentment, for example. So, you know, because you know, if you read on, I'm just very briefly, right? Just indulge me for 2 minutes. Just reading in further on the section on resentment on page 67, for example.
I know.
It says,
I know.
we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish? Our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, selfish, seeking, and frightened? You know, where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. Now, sort of reading that, you know, that's the book there is sort of pointing it at me. The book is pointing the book is pointing the finger very at Dave. So like when I come into AA, you see, Paul, right? I come into AA. The narrative that I picked up was, you know, I've been a bad boy. You know, I had to be honest about all the bad things that I'd done. I had to ask God to help me in 6 and 7, and when I had to go and apologise and put straight all the bad things that Dave had done. Do you know what I mean? And
Yes.
you know, and that fed in with a narrative, but you know, that I got from childhood, that Dave is a bad boy. You know what I mean? So what you're saying is a lot gentler, a lot more loving and nurturing in a way. I'm not such a, Dave's not such a bad guy. Dave's been attacked by this parasite, and and so it gives a whole, to me, it gives a whole massive softer slant on the whole program, if you like, right? The whole program, which is everything, which is AA, which is everything, isn't it? It's a much soft, and it kind of independently, and I agree with all your stuff, Paul, right? I do agree with what you're saying. I'm with you, right? Totally. That's why I keep coming back. But independently of that, I've sort of also worked out. Like I was born into alcoholism. My dad was an alcoholic, right? My dad was an alkie, and and being a young child of a very alcoholic father is not a sort of is not a pleasant experience, sort of thing. And I think a lot of my stuff and my issues and my drinking was born out of all this. You know what I mean? Which kind of also has made me think I'm not. I did bad stuff like we all did. I did bad stuff. Do you know what I mean? I did a lot of bad stuff, but I'm not a bad person, sort of thing. You know what I mean? But I don't know if it's a question, but it's just really, I'm kind of like, I'm just really, I've listened to you quite a few times. But I've just tonight that whole implication of the gentleness and the more gentleness it really hit me. So it's not really a question, but just an observation, really.
Dave, it's great to have you. I really appreciate your shares. And like they used to say, who's the hardest person on you?
Me.
But yeah, we need a little lightness.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is to see the big book goes from from radicalness to the ordinariness. All right, slog through it. You got to do this, right? Sometimes from one sentence to the next. Yeah. If you see when he's talking on page 84 that the problem, you will cease fighting anyone or anything. That's fucking radical. Yeah. That you're going to be placed in a position of neutrality with no thought or effort on your part. That's radicalness. Yeah. And then it gets to the slog, yes, and then because it touches a bigger current, which is duality. Yeah. So the big book is duality in a way. It has radical absoluteness, and then it has relative being fucked, and then going to a process of getting less fucked. Yeah. And sometimes it's from sentence to sentence, and basically it's really gives you, as the reader of it or as the follower of it, license for more downloads to come into it. Yeah. And also to emphasize, let's say, the lightness and the reliability, and that you're in good hands aspect, instead of having another chore put on your shoulder that it's all based on you. You got to do it and shit like that. Yes? Obviously, I lean towards the lighter version. So I emphasize the radicalness of it, because I think there is an easier, softer way, tell you the truth. Yeah? And especially with the recognition of the exact nature of the wrong. I mean, self continues its dominance of us, reflecting on the past while we're in recovery. It harvests so much guilt and shame on the behaviors that the disease produced through us, claiming them to be ours, that we get saddled even after 38 years of sobriety. We're still fucking saddled to the past. Yeah. We need a radical uplifting. Certain things aren't going to be undone by a lot of doing. They're not. They've got to be seen as not so. Yeah. There's got to be a radical, like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
hey, listen, I got to take a break.
Okay, one more question after that, then that's fine.
All right, I'll be right back. Just
Okay.
talk amongst yourselves.
All right. Why? Where are you going? What are you doing, Paul?
I got to go to the bathroom.
I know. Thank you.
Yeah.
My bladder has been conditioned to hold it in for an hour at meetings. This is an hour and a half.
Right, that's pretty good information. Thanks for letting us all know.
The bag is full.
That's too much information, but there you go. So listen, everyone, just to reiterate, we're here on Tuesday and Thursday at the same time. That's 10:30 on the West Coast, 1:30 on the East Coast, and 6:30 in the UK. Also to say that everything can be found at zenbitchslap.com, everything about Paul, hey? And if you want to go onto YouTube, you can find, there's a lot of stuff there about, if you just put in Zen Bitch Slap, I don't want to give away his second name, I'm sure most of you know it. Go onto Zen Bitch Slap on YouTube and you'll find a load of his stuff. Or go to his website, you'll find all his documents, a lot of his videos, and also the opportunity to buy the books, which I thoroughly recommend. Paul appears for free on these. He doesn't charge anything to do these sessions, but they've been invaluable. We've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 months, I think, and it's certainly having a big effect on a lot of people, I think. And so so if you want to buy a book, I'd thoroughly recommend it. You'd be doing some good work there for him. Also to say that he also holds his own sort of spiritual gatherings of his own, which is you can find his Zoom room on zenbitchslap.com, and those are on Wednesday and Saturday. Wednesday, I think, Mike, is at 7:30 of an evening.
All right, here I am again.
Yeah. And Wednesday at 1:30, which is obviously a better time for the European people, yeah?
Saturday.
7 on Wednesday and 1:30 on Saturday, local time on the West Coast. So yeah, thoroughly recommend those if you get along to them. So there's four Zoom sessions a week. We're being spoiled. So yeah, it's fantastic work. So back to you, Paul. And the last question of the day from Kristen.
Hi, Paul.
Dave?
Yeah. Kristen's going to ask the last question for you.
I hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
How
are you?
Good.
Good. Well, I just want to say thank you for these. We hear our story in AA, but in a general way, but you have told my story in a very specific way. So, and I sort of feel like I have been on the edge of this for a long time. So I'm not sure I can formulate the question, but you were talking earlier in the talk today about Kristen looking at self and seeing with awareness, like, oh, that is self, but that is self looking at self.
Yes.
Okay, so can you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because
yes.
I sort of feel like I'm right, like it sort of dropped me down a little bit more to maybe get a little deeper with this.
All right, and for the other folks, just excuse me, but self, yeah? Now, there's an awareness in life. Life reveals us, so let's say the program allows a revelation that you see where you used to look from, yeah? And let's say you call it self. So there's an awareness of this idea or this ownership that was like a misidentification. Yes? There's an awareness of that. That awareness is claimed by the mental state that has just been noticed, and it claims that awareness and says, I'm the one who's aware
Got it.
of that. Yeah?
Yeah.
It's not that it's not self-seeing self that's not what happens. It's seeing self and then a claiming of the seeing as another self. Yeah?
Yeah.
You see, it's different. It's not self-seeing self. there's seeing of self, yeah, and then there's that feeling of farness, but it's short-lived because the system of self claims the seeing and calls itself the seer. So now self disguises itself with this the claiming of the seeing. So now there's the seeing of self as self, yeah? But the self didn't see self. There was seeing, there was awareness. In other words, awareness became aware of self, yeah? And then the system came up pretty fast and claims to be the one who was aware of self. That's self getting out of self, yeah?
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
It isn't, self isn't seeing self. There's a seeing of self, and then the seeing is getting claimed by the system that produces self. So it produces another self now that as the seer of self, yeah?
Yeah, so you're saying I can have an awareness and
You
then,
want awareness.
okay, yeah,
You see it as I can have an awareness. That's self.
right. Ah, right, okay,
Yeah. Self doesn't have anything. It claims. See? It claims what's noticed by awareness or consciousness, and it says, I'm the one that was noticing it.
right.
That's
So
what
an
the
awareness comes
robbery
up.
that's going on during the day. Yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the little trap. That's like,
It's the little trap that reproduces itself. Yeah. The
yes,
seeing, there is no self that can see. There's seeing of self.
right.
The seeing of self, and then here it is, the seeing of self, that's what's happening. You're seeing a mental activity as other, really. So
Yeah,
there's a seeing of self, but then the selfing that produced this sense of self arises really quickly and says, I'm the seer of self.
yes.
Now, this self now gets anointed as Paul, so now Paul has seen self, but in fact it's self trying to get out of self. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got it. I mean,
Well, just notice it. You'll know it. You'll see it. You'll see the robbery. Does it stop the robbery? Well, the robbery goes out, but as you keep noticing the robbery, less and less of the bank money goes out of the bank. Yeah, so to
right.
speak. Yes.
So you're saying an awareness happens and
It doesn't
then,
happen. It's there all the time. It's happening. Yeah. Our life is based on awareness, really. It's not my awareness. It's awareness. Yeah.
and then the claiming of that.
Yeah, the mental state comes after and claims it. And then it uses an interpretation of what's happening to imply it as the main character. That's what it does. It's like when you were a baby, life was happening. Yes. Now, as the head develops, it's turned into a narration of life's happening to me. It's a completely different event. Yeah, it's the same event, but it's a completely different feeling. Yeah,
Right.
and so what happens is something in us feels really uncomfortable having life happening to it all fucking day. So now it wants to get out of that situation as that which is the basis of the situation. So self can't get out of self. So we're screwed in a way. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But in
Right.
fact, you're not, because you're not self.
Mm.
Yeah? That's the beauty of it. The relief, really, the relief from the bondage of self is inherently available because you're not self. In other words, you're bonded to an idea. Yeah? That idea can be forgotten. Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's say you have an idea of a house, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go through all the work and effort to build the house. Now you can give up the idea of the house like that, yeah? But it's going to be more difficult to give up a house. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes. There you go. So there's an idea of self, and then there's self. Either there's an idea of self, which is easy to get out of because you're not in, or then there's self, which demands wanting to get out, but now you try to get out of self as self. So the house
Right.
is, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Oh God. It just seems like a vicious cycle.
It is, but you're beyond it, and you're under it, and you're over it, and you're around it. You're not in it. That's the one big fucking assumed mistake. You're not in it. You're around it, you're over it, you're under it. Yeah, it's appearing in you, but it is not you appearing in it. That's the great relief. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Thank
think
you.
That's it. So thank you very much, Paul. You want to say your goodbyes? You've done great today. Thank you very much.
I want to say my goodbyes. I should listen to this recording. I thought I liked this one.
That's great.
Well, it will be, just to say on that, it will be available on YouTube and on your website pretty damn
Maybe I'll
sharpish.
get some good tips. I don't know. All right, let me say hello to Vicky and good night. Vicky, nice to see you. Kaiser, Mike Z. Mike, you got to come by soon. Give us a call. Sukai, Ken, nice to see you, Ken. We got Lenovo. I think I got that wrong.
That's a
But
phone.
I'm looking at you. Jess, always good to see you. I've been served the spiritual subpoena today. Woohoo! Cam, Chicago. We got Kristen. Kristen, yeah. Sue, David. David is the main man with Daz and Mike. This is why we're having these platforms. David Gilbank. So he's been a fine example of service.
Birthday boy.
We got Dimitri. Dimitri, nice to see you. Yes. We got Juna, I think that is. Joona. Juna, probably.
Yuna.
Nice to see you. He looks like he's sitting, waiting for, yeah, they're going to tell him something. All right. We got Jack G in a nice little garage setting, I guess. It may not be his. He seems to be anxious in there. Therese has left the game. That's good. Helen, you're looking happier and more emotionally sober. Fantastic, Helen. Yeah. Daz, Dave, I really, Dave, yeah, I'm really appreciating you at these talks.
Good old Dave.
Yeah, you're bringing the best out of Paul. There's Sue O up there. Sue just appeared. Nice to see you, Sue. Up there, yeah. We got, let's see, James. James was low key today.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't accept his 67-cent check for the fucking half and half at the supermarket.
I get low key sometimes. I'm cool.
Sue D, nice to see you. Mike O, I think it's Mike O. Mickey, she's like the foundational point of the whole meeting. Nice to see you, Mickey. I just lost you again. Let me go here. I'm done soon. Don't worry. Zoe, always a pleasure. Nice to see you, Zoe. Rob Farr. Yes.
Yeah.
But never that far away, Rob.
Oh.
Malcolm, nice to see you. Soak all this stuff in, Malcolm. It's gonna show up the rest of your life. Ian, Maggie, good to see you, Maggie. Yeah. We got Topher. Nice to see you, Topher. You're looking pretty. You got a suit and a tie on. I know it's just a picture. We got Ann S.
Yeah.
We got Malcolm. Other people are disappearing as I speak. Natalie, Julie, my writer and artist extraordinaire. Amelia DiNardo, looking like she just came out of the, I don't know where. I can question her personally. I think I'll do that today. All right. Hey, thanks for everyone for participation. I hope to see you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Yes.
Penny.
Let's not take ourselves too seriously.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you,
We
Paul.
aren't a bum lot. Oh.
See you guys. I'll talk to you guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Paul. See you, mate.
Bye.
Congratulations again, David.
Thank you very much, mate.